Hi there, welcome to another edition of Yoga with Anne. I'm trying my recording a little bit different today, so do let me know any issues you might encounter, what's better, what's not better, what looks good, what doesn't. I'm doing my best with what I have available for lighting, for microphone. So when I teach at my live Zoom public yoga classes, I use this microphone, but I haven't been able to use it recording on my phone. So I thought I would still try to record my YouTube yoga via Zoom and then upload that to my YouTube just to kind of see how that plays out. So I'm so excited to be teaching another class to you today, and today is whenever you practice. I do have this planned as something to help you transition with the time change, which happens on Sunday, March 14th. Most people spring forward. I live in Arizona and we don't do time change. So if you're Pacific right now, once you spring forward, we will be back on the same time zone. Right now, Arizona is mountain time. So for me, time change is very difficult. Most of my family lives in Arizona and has stayed in Arizona. And so they're always surprised when I lived in Oregon and California that it was so difficult for me. I had someone ask me, really, is 1 hour that big of a deal? And for those of us that it affects quite dramatically, yes, 1 hour is a huge deal. Spring forward to me was pretty difficult, more than falling back, but both are equally challenging to our systems. Especially springing forward, we tend to lose an hour of sleep. So more accidents happen the Monday after time change. So it is a big deal. For me, like it being darker in the morning, that doesn't bother me. And so I'd rather not time change. So I actually prefer not to time change. That being said, I put the sequence together to be a little slower, to be a little more mindful, to help you with that transition. And it can be used anytime. It can be good for jet lag, when you're tired, when you need more energy, when you need to quiet and slow down. So it really gives you what you need in the moment and time that you're practicing this sequence. For props, at least a blanket or a towel that can fold or roll easily. If you have yoga blocks, but we can work around them. And then something that works like a strap. So it doesn't have to be a yoga strap. It can be a necktie or the belt to a robe or a scarf or something like that that you can use. Later on, I am going to use a yoga prop that I have that probably a lot of people don't have, which is a folding chair. So if you have a folding chair, great, grab that, set it to the side. But anything can work. A couch, a comfy chair like I have in the corner, a coffee table. You could even use a wall. So it's a variation of legs up the wall if you're familiar with that pose. And if you're not, no big deal. When we get there, I'll show you a few ways to set up to get into it. I'll just say for myself, actually having my legs up the wall is not one of my favorite poses. So the variation, having my legs supported on something, is much better. So that's what I prefer for myself. And really you can use any piece of furniture to help you with that pose. So let's get started. Come onto your back in constructive rest. So constructive rest where you start with your knees bent and your feet on your mat. And as I come down here, shifting a little bit can feel really nice. For me, a lot of times coming to lie down on a hard surface is intense and not super comfortable. So you might find that you need to shift around, make some small movements, whatever that is for you right now. And then start to settle in. And if you're not settled yet, then continue to do what you need to do to feel a little more connected to your mats, to the earth. Notice how your shoulders and upper back are connecting with the mat, your hips, your glutes, your feet, the backs of your arms. Maybe your hands are also on the mat. I like to have mine on my belly. It helps me to connect with my breath. And then we'll just start to notice our breath as it is right now. if your mind wanders, come back to your breath. Being at peace in this moment, the here and the now. Your next inhale, deepen your breath. And allow full exhale to release. Feel that affect your shoulders, your heart, anything else in your body. If you need to do that a time or two more, feel free. Full, long, deep inhale. And full release of that exhale. Really let it all go. Let it out. Maybe one more time. Your eyes are closed. You can bring them back to open. Let's make a little bit of movement again. So you could just shift your knees a little bit side to side. I usually like to hug my knees into my chest. Maybe you want to roll your head up to your knees or not. That can be a lot in the neck and the upper back. So be mindful of that. And we'll come back to constructive rest. And I didn't mention this as you came to lie down, so your strap might not be nearby. Mine typically is. So if you need to get it, roll over to one side, sit up, get your strap. It's just better for your body, right? Because sometimes it's so close, but not that close, and I pulled muscles that way, and just better to be mindful and to be kind to your body. So we're going to take this strap and just kind of place it on your belly and hug your right knee into your chest. And then take your strap and you're going to put it around either the ball of your foot or the top of your heel. So the top of your heel is right where it meets the arch. So try not to have it right on the arch. That's difficult to do. It might slide around, so you might have to play with that. And then once you have your strap in place, you can extend your leg up long. And you got two ends of the strap. So right end in the right hand, left end in the left hand, and lengthening your leg as much as you can. So if you're like this, then you move your leg away so that your leg can come to straight. And it's fine. This is okay. This is where you should be if that's what your body is allowing you to do right now. You want this pose to be accessible, all yoga poses to be accessible to you. So you can decide to keep your left knee bent or extend your left leg out long. And we're going to go through a series of variations of this pose. So at any time, you can extend your leg or bend your knee. So really reaching. So my extended leg is active as well. So I'm pressing through all four corners of my left leg and all four corners of my right leg. If that's too much, like it's causing pain or sciatica, definitely back off. That could be a matter of moving your leg away from you. It can also be a matter of more pressing through the ball of your foot, but legs should be active. Don't let them be just kind of, wet noodles there. Let them be really active. And then notice how you're holding onto the strap. I typically hold on for dear life. So where can I let go? And letting go can be physically letting go, adjusting, focusing your breath in an area where you feel a lot of intensity. And then take the strap into your right hand. Again, your left leg can stay out long or you can bend your knee. And we're going to open up. So we're going to open the leg out to the right. My left arm is going to go out to the side. I'm going to start to slowly open up. And you go where's best for you. So I like to bring my hand down my strap and have my elbow on the mat like a kickstand. And I start to open my leg up. So think about it's moving out, but also think about your toes touching your head, which is not going to happen, but kind of have that action. You're working toward that. And breathe. And then notice your left hip. So if you're really coming off your left hip, maybe you come a little higher. Still active through both legs. And the next time you inhale, deep from your belly, you're going to start to lift that leg up. So you're not pulling it up with your hands. Fully exhale. We'll switch the strap into our left hand and right arm goes wherever is comfortable. And again, decide with this extended leg, does it stay bent? Does it extend out long? As we come into a twist, you're going to start to move your right leg over to the left. And you can just come here. You can go deeper. You can stack your hips to come more into a twist. Again, my hand goes down the strap. My elbow bends, if it's a kickstand, to come into my twist. And then your heart is basically up toward the ceiling. And there's still a reach. I'm reaching from this outer hip down the outer seam of my leg, pressing through all four corners of both of my feet because that's okay for me. And then your next inhale, again, deepen that belly, lifting up. Fully exhale. Let's bend our left knee. Let's bend our right knee. Bring both feet back to the mat. And just for a moment, do what I call mini windshield wipering. So it's more of a movement in your hips. Your knees just subtly move side to side. So not full windshield wipers, which we'll do in a moment. And then we come back to center. Make sure your strap is nearby, whether it's by you or on your belly, whichever convenient. Let's hug the left knee into the chest. And again, take your strap and lasso your foot. Make sure it's not right in the middle of your arch if possible, and extend up. And this side's gonna be very different from the first side. I'm gonna do the ball of the foot. That's just a little easier for me to keep it there. So this side's different. So it doesn't mean that you need to extend your leg or keep your knee bent, whether you did that on the first side. So check in. As I extend my right leg, it's definitely more intense. And so I actually have to move my leg a little bit. So I'm moving it away from me. And I'm seeing if I can relax my shoulders, hands on my strap, breath flowing. This pose is called Supta Padangusthasana, or reclined hand to big toe pose. So for most of us, our hands won't ever touch our toe. And so we use a strap to make our arms longer. Pressing through all four corners of both of my feet. And remember, you can press through the ball if that's healthier for you. Just nice and active, really lengthening. Let's take the strap into the left hand, and I'm gonna start to bring my hand down the strap, allowing my right arm to open up and moving my leg over to left. So make sure you're not coming off your right hip. So you're gonna come off a little bit. You're gonna feel more weight on the left side than the right. So don't just dump over. So you're still really active, reaching from this inner hip out, and then thinking about moving your foot up toward, like it's gonna come onto the top of your head, the top corner of your left side of your mat. Your right side stays anchored as much as it can. And then next inhale, deep behind that belly, like imagine it's behind your navel. Inhaling to come back up. Fully exhale. Switch the strap into your right hand. Check in with your extended leg. Left arm goes out to the side, and then we'll come into whatever variation of the twist you want to come into today. You can just move your foot leg over a couple of inches. That's pretty intense. That's fine to stay there for whatever reason, or start to come more into the twist, stacking your hips. Allow my gaze to be up toward the ceiling, my heart to open, lengthening, breathing. And with that next inhale, remember, deep again, really deep, lifting back up. Fully exhale, bend your right knee, release the strap, bend your left knee. Bring both your feet back to your mat, back to constructive rest, and then give yourself a moment to do that little mini windshield wipering. We'll transition into Supta Baddha Konasana, or kind cobbler's pose. So your feet come together and your knees open out to the side. So typically for me, early in a practice, my feet can't touch because I have tight hips. But we did a lot of opening for the hips, so I might be okay. And we won't be here a long time. You don't have to have your feet touch, and you can move your feet farther away from your pelvic floor. You also can have support under your knees. So if you have blocks or pillows or something like that, and if you need to come out early, you come out early. Where do you feel the most intense sensations? Can you send your breath there? So imagine wherever that is, you can breathe into that spot. So your inner hips, we actually can really move our breath there because our psoas muscle, that inner deep inner hip flexor, connects with our diaphragm, our breathing muscle. So we can actually breathe into our inner hips. So maybe you're feeling sensation like I feel a little bit in my left glute. So you just imagine you can send your energy there. If your arms are long enough, mine aren't quite long enough, you could help to lift from the back of your thighs to bring your knees back up, your feet back to your mat. And then we're going to roll over to one side. So you could just roll over. You could hug your knees in and do that rocking again. Maybe there's some other movement you want to make before transitioning. And then once you're there, you press yourself up, coming up into a seated position for just a moment. We're going to transition into a tabletop onto all fours. So I like to have padding. So I'm going to use my blanket. So when I say blanket, that can mean your towel or whatever you're using as your support. And then once you set up, or to set up, checking in that your wrists are under your shoulders. So that might not be okay for you. You might need to move your hands a little bit forward or hands a little wider, but that's a good starting point. Sometimes my wrists bother me and I need to adjust that. So you also have the option, especially if you have blocks, if your wrists are really bothering you, you can use your blocks. I like it on the medium height because it's almost the same height for my tabletop and my hands are active here. So I'm not just kind of hanging up. I'm really pressing and lifting and opening, and hands are active like if they were on the mat. If you don't have blocks, you could use books, or you could be here. I'm a little lower and I don't like this as much. You could have your hands in the typical tabletop position. So, you need to check in and decide for yourself here. Do you do what's best for you? Make sure that your knees are right under your hips. Fingers are spread wide. Arms are active, shoulder blades are wide, and then I feel a lift in my belly. And we're going to do some cat-cow, so we'll move to our breath. So the next time you exhale, you're going to tuck your tail under, your spine will follow, your head and neck will follow, but move last, right? The pelvis moves first. And then when you inhale, you start to tilt your tail up, your spine follows, your heart opens, and your head and neck slightly lift. So go to your own breath for a few rounds here. And maybe cat-cow is just what you need right now. Or maybe you want to do something different, like move your hips side to side, move your head and neck. Maybe you want to shift back a little and come a little forward. Just be mindful of your wrist. Don't go too far forward. So check in. Your body is telling you what it needs, what it wants. Just be mindful with the movement, with your breath. Do one more round here. So whatever you're doing, make sure you finish up and you even out. Once you're complete, come back to your tabletop. And step your hands one handprint forward. We're going to come into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. So if you need to stay in your tabletop, or you could come into this puppy version where your hands move forward, you slightly shift your hips back. That's a possibility. back to my setup, my hands set up for my down dog, curl my toes under. I'm gonna lift my knees and hover, so I'm really engaged in my belly, and then shift my hips back. And you can keep your knees deeply bent. That actually can help to lengthen your spine and take some of the weight out of your shoulders and wrists. And then maybe you want to play with it. Maybe start to bend one knee a little more and straighten the other leg, aiming that heel down to the mat. Go slowly. Sometimes I see people pedal like this and I'm not quite sure what's happening. I don't really feel anything when I do that. This is more focused. And I'm focused more on the leg that's straight than the knee that's bent. And that's where I feel the sensations. You're basically gazing at your toes. So make sure your head's not dropped and then you're not holding it up. So your ears are between your upper arms. And after you feel even and enough pedaling, come to stillness. And if this is too long, then you come back to your tabletop. And then let's bring our knees back down to our mat. Back to your tabletop just for a moment. So if you have blocks and they're not nearby, get them. If you only have one block, that'll work. I'm actually going to shift and face forward because that'll be a little easier for you to see me. If you don't have blocks, we can do this without blocks, no problem. So you kind of start in your tabletop once again, and then let's step the right foot forward. I'm going to shift back even more so that you can fully see my foot where it's placed. I have my blocks on my highest height. So if you only have one block, have it on the inside of your foot with both your hands there. And I switched it just so I have better surface for my hands. So if you have blocks and you can still reach the floor, like sometimes we round too much. So I want you to be a little bit higher here. You feel that lift from your belly and your heart open. And then we're going to transition. So if you don't have blocks, you can be up here on your thigh. And the same thing can happen as we move. I'm going to bring both my hands and both my blocks on the inside of my foot and heel toe off to the side. So you're going to be really mindful here. So a lot of times I see people here, or maybe it's turned in here. So see how my knee in those positions is not in a good safe spot. So if you're on the short edge of your mat, likely your toes are off your mat and your heel is on the mat. So my knee is right above my heel. Sometimes I see this. So you might have to adjust, right? Maybe you crawl your toes forward just to keep you safe. I'm adjusting my blocks and I'm totally fine staying right here. I feel plenty of sensation in my hip. You might find that you can come lower. So be mindful that you're even. So if you only have one block or you're on the floor and you're kind of crooked here, stay higher up. You could be right here on the mat. Like I'm okay here. I feel length in my spine. I have to be mindful because it's really easy for me to round in this position. That's why I like to be higher up. Then I can have length in my spine. My heart is open and I'm still getting plenty of sensation in my hip. Because I'm turned, you can't see my back foot. I have my back toes curled under because that's best for me. I feel very tippy and unbalanced if my toes are flat on the mat. So for these kind of low lunges, I say that's up to you. You might hear from other teachers that it needs to be one way or the other. One of my teacher friends and I discussed this because that's the kind of things that we talk about. And she felt that curling your toes under your back knee actually keeps your knee, this knee, safer. So that's something to consider as well. This is an intense pose. This is lizard pose, and we tend to hold it a little bit longer. So as we're in it, you might feel yourself start to get deeper into the pose. And so that might mean that you lower down. It also might mean that it's too intense and you need to come up or come out of the pose. So let's start to make our way out. Start to heel toe back to center, hands and blocks on either side of the foot, and then set your foot back. And I'm just going to shift my blocks a little bit out of the way so I can come back to a tabletop. And maybe here you want to, shift your hips or do some cat-cow, or that leg that we just did, maybe extend it out and give it a good shake. You get to decide. And then when you feel ready, you'll step your left foot forward. So starting here for that foundation, right? This is where we start by having our knee right above our heel. Our blocks, if we're using blocks, they're right under our shoulders, right? So we don't have them like far forward or out here. They're an extension of our arms. That's the point of the props, is they make the pose more accessible most of the time. Sometimes they actually help us to get deeper into a pose. It just depends on what the use is for the prop at the moment. So it's not cheating, it's not the loser pose. There are a lot of reasons why we use props. I love props. I know that not everyone has yoga props, so I try to find ways to teach poses where you don't have to have props. But I say the more yoga props, the better. It's interesting, this side, I actually have my back toes not curled under, which is unusual, but I feel pretty steady. As we come into the lizard, that might change. All right, let's start to transition. Hands or hands and blocks on the inside of your foot, heel toe off to the side. Make sure you get in a good spot, right? My knee is right above my heel. And I adjust my blocks so that they're right under my shoulders. You can always lower, come higher. And if you don't have blocks, you could even be here or even have your left forearm and your thigh, but don't just like hang out, like be active. And breathe. So remember that whole idea of like our psoas muscle, which is spelled P-S-O-A-S, and it's one of my favorite muscles. It touches the diaphragm. So you can actually breathe into your inner hips. I find that rather fascinating. The psoas muscle is amazing. There's so many things about it. I recommend looking it up if you're curious about those kinds of things. More rounds of breath here. Of course, if you need to come out early, you come out early. Let's start to heel toe back to center. I'm going to set my blocks off to the side so I can come back to my tabletop. And then again, maybe you extend that leg and give it a shake. Maybe you move your hip side to side or do a little cat-cow. Or you could come into a child's pose. So give yourself a few moments. Do what you need to do. I'm going to shift back in that direction that I started on my mat. And I'm also going to drink some water because drinking water is really important. And when I teach, I just need to drink more water. My mouth gets dry. So having water, even when I'm not, is always a good idea. Just move it out of the camera. Okay, so we're going to come down onto, you're going to come down onto your belly. So usually I start in a tabletop and maybe shift my hands slightly forward and kind of do the bottom part of a push-up. Be mindful to come down onto the mat. So depending on how your body feels, you might want to be higher up and have your forearms on your mat with your elbows right under your shoulders. Or if you're comfortable to lie down more, you can stack your palms and rest your chin, your forehead, or your cheek on your hands. Because of my microphone and that I'm teaching, I can't quite come all the way down, but I can come down to my chin. So let's have our legs active. So think about like extending, like you're reaching from that inner hip out through your heel. So here, our active foot is a little bit different, right? So it's not here, because this cannot be good for the low back. But we want to be active. So you're trying to press your toenails into your mat. So your toes are not curled under. Pressing the tops of your toes and toenails into the mat. Pressing your knees into the mat. Pressing your hip points. And then there's a lift in your belly. And you can stay down here in your cobra or sphinx variation. Or let's set up for, excuse me, I said cobra, I meant crocodile. We're going to shift into cobra. That's okay. So bring your hands on your shoulders, elbows as close to your sides as you can. Starting with your chin or forehead on the mat. Again, press the feet, the knees, the hip points, lift the belly. And then let's do a tiny shoulder roll. Bring your shoulders up toward your ears a little and then down your back. And then the next time you inhale, peel your chest up off the mat. To go very high here, a slight tuck of your chin so your neck stays long. So don't dump your head, but your neck is long on all four sides. Next exhale, come on down. Rest the best way for you. You're welcome to wiggle out your hips or even do some windshield wipering here. We're going to do one more back bend. You can stay in crocodile, in sphinx. You can do cobra again, or you can join me. Nice active legs in any of those poses. Join me for Shalabhasana locust. So bring your arms down by your sides. Again, start with your chin or forehead on the mat. Press through the tops of your feet, your knees, press your pelvis into the mat, you'll feel that lift in your belly. Shoulder roll this time goes up toward the ears and then up toward the ceiling. Lift your legs, lift your arms, so you're trying to press your triceps toward the ceiling. And then if you'd like, you can peel your chest up. Again, make sure that your chin's not jutting forward. Slight tuck of your chin. And then I'm gonna do another shoulder roll. So I'm actually gonna do full shoulder roll, and that's going to help me to open up more and lift a little bit higher. You don't have to do that. Be mindful of your low back. And then next exhale, come on down. Again, giving yourself a moment to rest here. Now let's press back up into a seated position. So get your towel or blanket. Mine's already folded. That's how I like to use it under my head and for me to be in a seated position. So most of us, I'll show this from the side. Most of us have terrible posture, myself included. So I sit like this a lot. And I can still do that on the blanket, but it does actually aid me in sitting taller. So it allows our pelvis to tilt slightly forward so we can have that lift and that opening. And you can still do this, right? But it reminds you to sit tall and long. So I'll come back to face forward. Come into a cross-legged position. If that's not okay, then sit in a way that's comfortable for you. So if it's better to be in Baddha Konasana, feet on the mat, extending your legs out long, find the best position for you. And maybe a blanket is not high enough and you need to be on a block or books, something of that nature. You could sit in a chair as well for this. Nice and tall. So we're going to inhale. Imagine that you can lengthen from your belly button. So you're really anchored through your sit bones, lifting from your belly button to your heart, out through the crown of your head. And as you exhale, start to turn your belly toward your right knee. Your left hand comes to your right knee. Your other hand can be at your hip, or it can start to come behind you. I'm tenting my fingers because my arms aren't very long. I could have a block behind me to press my palm into my block, but I'm okay here because then I'm not relying on it too much. It's actually helping me to lengthen and to open. So think about moving with your breath. As you inhale, you lengthen. And as you exhale, maybe you come deeper into your twist. Head and neck are last to move. They can stay facing the direction of your heart. They can turn to look over your back shoulder. They can turn to look over your front shoulder. Next exhale, come out of the twist. We're going to come into a forward fold. So we're going to keep that length, keep that anchoring. Inhale tall. Exhale, hinge at your hip creases. So no rounding to get here. Length. So that might mean that your forward fold is here today. Maybe your hands come right in front of you, maybe farther forward. So if you got all the way down, like your heart would touch first, not your head. So think about that. So notice if you're dumping your head, if you're jutting your chin forward, slight tuck of your chin to keep that all even and long. You can even think about here on your mat, pressing your palms in your mat, almost like you're trying to pull your chest through your arms. So there's a little action here. Next inhale, come on up. Fully exhale. Then you're going to reach your arms behind you. So I just have mine wider so you can see them, but then I'm going to bring them closer. So I'm reaching my fingertips down toward the floor. I'm going to do a shoulder roll and come into a heart opener. So anchoring through your hips, lift in your belly, opening your heart, head and neck slightly lift up, ever so slightly. You're not dumping back. And then let's release and do shoulder roll or shake. And then let's switch the crossing legs. So you likely went to your habitual side and this is your non-habitual side, but if it causes pain to sit in this position, then you can go back to the first side or sit in a different way. So again, let's anchor through our sit bones to sit tall and lengthen. And then inhale nice and tall. And exhale, start to come into the twist to the left, starting with your belly button. So it's belly button, upper belly, chest, and then shoulders. And your right hand will come to your knee. Your back hand can either stay at your hip or behind you. So keeping length in your spine as your belly and heart open into your twist. So if you want to play with that, with the idea of your breath, inhaling tall, exhaling, it could just be like a micro, tiny, tiny movement. And it might not be at all, right? It might just be your breath. And that's okay. And then once you feel like you're in your twist, where you're going to be for a few rounds of breath, your head and neck can adjust wherever is comfortable. You can always experiment and try something different. Inhale nice and tall. On your exhale, come out of your twist. We're going to inhale again, gathering that length. Exhale, come into the forward fold again. So it might be different, right? Because this is a different forward hip. So be mindful of that. Don't go too far. If you notice you're rounding, come back up, lengthen, and then maybe you come forward or maybe not. Noticing where your head and neck are placed. Press those palms and maybe do a little action of like you're trying to scoot yourself through your arms. Keeping your sit bones anchored into whatever you're sitting on. And then we'll inhale back up. Fully exhale. And then one more time, reaching behind you with your fingertips. So I'm going to do a shoulder roll that helps me to open more and move my shoulders back and then my shoulder blades down onto my rib cage as we come into a heart opener, right? So anchoring once again, feeling the lift starting at your belly to your heart, slight lift of your head and chin and neck. Like you have a light on your heart and you're trying to shine that flashlight forward. And then let's come out and do a little shake or some shoulder rolls, whatever would feel good for you here. Awesome. All right. So we're going to do a supported bridge pose. So you can do that with a folded towel or blanket or with a block. So no cushion under your head like we started class. I started class with support under my head. So I'll show how to do the supported bridge with a blanket and with a block. So I'm going to have both nearby. Come into constructive rest. Your knees bent, your feet on your mat. Feet are about hip distance apart. And then I'm just going to hold on to my block. I'm going to press my feet into my mat and lift up just enough to slide the block under my sacrum and tailbone. So make sure it's not under your low back. You might have to adjust moving up or down a little bit. We don't have a blanket under our head so that we keep the natural curve of our neck, and then arms can be wherever's comfortable. So if you don't have a block or you prefer a little more restorative, then you can use a blanket. And if you have a bolster, use a bolster, man. All right, so basically the same idea, pressing your feet in, lifting up. This can actually support your low back as well. So you could have your sit bones off a little bit and you can have support under your low back. So you get to the side. I'll just stay here because I'm here and it feels nice. This is an inversion, a slight inversion as your head is below your heart. It's a heart opener, allowing your hips to relax and release. Did a lot of stuff for the hips today. Press your feet into your mat to lift your hips up and slide your support out of the way. And then slowly come on down. And I actually have to adjust because my spine gets a little longer. And then roll over to one side and come up to seated. So we're going to set up for that final relaxation pose. If the options I show you just are not jiving with you today, that's totally fine. No worries. Do what's best for you. I mentioned legs up the wall, which is not one of my favorites, but I'll show it to you. So if I were to do legs up the wall, I would want some support under my head. So just kind of have that nearby. So you have to have at least enough space to fling your legs up to get there. And it's not super graceful. So you sit as close as you can to the wall and then bring your legs up. And the first few times you do this, you may like fling all the way over and see my legs aren't super even. So you can adjust all of that. And my sit bones are not touching the wall. I have tight hamstrings, and so that's just not comfortable. So it doesn't matter how far or close your butt is to the wall. It's totally fine if it's not touching, especially if that's like your hamstrings are screaming. You don't want that. So this might be really awesome for you, and you want to stay here, and hands can be on your belly or out to the side. My feet and legs fall asleep pretty quickly in this position, so I don't love it. There are ways that you can adjust that, but maybe that's for another class. So you could, I'm going to do legs up a chair, and I have a folding chair that I'm going to use. I mentioned that purple chair in the corner would totally work for this if I didn't have my yoga chair. And since this isn't super comfortable, it's cold and it's hard, I'm going to put another blanket on it. So that's an option as well. If I were using that purple chair, I would need to do that because it's pretty cushy and comfy. And then I'm going to use support under my head. So you could use a coffee table, a couch, a dining room chair, an office chair, all sorts of things. So you can decide on that. And then I'm going to sit pretty close to the chair. And then as gracefully as possible, flinging my legs up. And I have the backs of my knees supported by the edge of the chair. So you might find that you have to adjust. And then if you have something to cover your eyes, an eye pillow, a washcloth, you can close the lights, turn the lights off in your room. And then once you're settled, come back to your breath. Coming back to here and now, finding your peace in this moment. Next inhale, you take in, let it be fuller, deeper, longer. And as you exhale, make sure it's a full release. So really feel your breath empty out your body, release and let go. And as you're ready, you can start to make movement. So whatever position you're in, you can start to move your toes and your fingers. I have my feet on my chair, so I'm going to bring my feet to the edge of the chair. Depending on the chair, like I can actually move my chair off of my mat and then hug my knees in the chest. You could hug your knees in from legs up the wall. If you're in a different position, you might have to physically move yourself a little bit. And then as you're ready, make your way over to one side. And then with the strength of your hands and arms, come up into a seated position. I'm going to take my blanket once again and sit on the edge of my blanket. So sit in a way that's comfortable for you. If that's sitting on the chair, then please do that. You're still practicing yoga and honoring your body and reminding yourself that this is where you need to be right now. And then once you're ready, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze. Just allow yourself to be. And we'll bring our hands together at heart center in Anjali Mudra. Keep peace in your mind, keep strength in your body, and keep love in your heart. Namaste. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I appreciate you being here and supporting me as a yoga teacher. You're welcome to comment below. You can email me at therealgofitgirl@gmail.com. You can find me on social media, Facebook and Twitter as GoFitGirl and Instagram as The Real Go Fit Girl. I hope you have a great day. I love practicing with you and adding classes to my YouTube channel. I try to do one in about the middle of the month. It doesn't always work out. And I'm trying to do one class a month. If I have more time and energy, I do more. Right now, my life's a little crazy, so I'm getting this class in, and we'll see when the next one fits in. But do know that I honor requests, so if you do have requests, let me know as well. And have a great day, and I hope to practice with you again soon. Thanks.